got to get the energy levels up, right?
We have to. Everyone's still stoned from Snoop Dogg.
We have the fun panel. This is great. So I assume most people in the audience know of OnlyFans, but Keily, can you tell us how you explain OnlyFans to your friends and family?
How do you explain OnlyFans to your friends and family? Well, it really depends, I think. I mean, OnlyFans, okay, we were founded in 2016. We are a user-generated content platform. We have 300 million fans worldwide. Well, 400 million fans worldwide, actually, 3 million content creators. In terms of the interaction, there are creators who create and monetize content, like Whitney, and then there are fans who are the people who subscribe to that content. And ultimately, it enables creators to connect with their fan base, express themselves in a free way, and to really grow their fan base and to enable them to improve their global reach. For fans, it enables them to interact with the creators that they want to follow more, and to really experience that creator-fan dynamic, which is very different to other social media platforms, which are much more broadcast, obviously. The primary difference is also subscriptions, right? So ultimately, people are ready to pay to interact with creators and to pay to receive media content. And that's either through monthly subscriptions or through pay-per-views or tips or different monetization strategies. And as a result of that, we've actually paid out over 20 billion to creators since we were founded in 2016.
Wow, it's a big number. And we're going to get to some of your financials too, which are equally as eye-popping. Whitney, can you tell us how you ended up working with OnlyFans and what were people's reactions when you said you were?
Sure, yeah. You know, when I got a call that was like, OnlyFans wants to work with you in television. They want you to do their first television project. And I was like, is this because my last name's Cummings? This feels a little on the nose. But I'll start with, like, as a comic, you know, it's like we're always, you know, it's my job to know what's going on in the zeitgeist. And I've been hearing about OnlyFans. I've been hearing, you know, Cardi B made $20 million a year, and Cardi B is my Brene Brown. So I had to investigate what was going on over there. She is a business genius. And, you know, I get very fascinated with the taboo around sex, with the taboo around, you know, this is a sex website, whatever it is. And I was like, tell me more about this, because it seems to be subscriptions. And I got fascinated because in a time where porn is ubiquitous and free, you can see it whenever you want, however you want, and you're telling me men are going to pay for it? Is this where, like, the radical feminists are? Like, this is, men are going to pay to see boobs? This is wild. Like, what a bunch of dorks, you know? And so I got fascinated by that, the idea that porn is so ubiquitous, but there's a bunch of people that don't want to see something that's probably unethically made, where the woman's not getting paid, where, you know, like, is that a bruise? Like, what am I looking at, you know? And so I really thought that was, like, fascinating. And then I went on there, and it's not just sex, of course. That's just what's going to make the headlines, right? So it's, like, cooking and all working out and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, I love working with networks. I love, you know, collaborating with people that know what they're doing in television and, you know, being in that tradition. But I was sort of like, as a comic, you know, when you're doing, like, you know, network, and I don't even think it's censorship. It's just standards and practices. There's certain things you can't say. You can't say Coke because Pepsi sponsors it. Fine. I'm not going to fight against that. You know, I'm fine with that. I'll say Powerade instead of Gatorade. I don't care. I have bills. And so I was like, you know, I liked the idea of being like, oh, there's this place where there's, like, no censorship. I can kind of do whatever I want. So on the subscription side, instead of, like, dirty photos and dirty videos, that's where I'll put, like, the dirty jokes. The jokes that if I put them on Twitter or say them anywhere else, I'm gonna, like, get canceled and lose my job. I'm also the same person that got sent to HR when I was working on Roseanne for saying Merry Christmas. So, like, you know, I had a little PTSD in that area. And, you know, I think that comedy, when, you know, people go like, what happened to comedy? How come everyone's getting in trouble? I think it's because comedy's all about context, right? Comedy's supposed to be, you know, delivered by a comedian in, like, a dark basement at, like, 9 p.m. after everyone's had a couple drinks, you know? But now we're doing comedy online during the day on Twitter at 2 p.m. It's not being delivered by us. Like, we'll post, you know, some joke, and it doesn't hit because it's just not the right context, right? Like, you're gonna post a great joke that's maybe a little off color, but you can't control what those jokes are in between, you know? It might be posted in between, you know, a death toll and, like, a school shooting. And now you don't know that, you know? So all of a sudden it's not as funny as you know, it would have been if it had been delivered, you know, in a comedy venue. So I like the idea of going, like, let me go to this place that's a little taboo. You know, comedy started in strip clubs. Like, that's, you know, where we started, for better or for worse. So I like the idea of going, let me go to this place where, there's a little taboo, where there's not as much censorship, where I can recreate the environment of an actual comedy club vibe.
Yeah, and I think
and money. I love money.
And money. I mean, who doesn't like money?
Love money.
I think
that's why I'm here. I'm getting paid handsomely.
I think you hit it on the nose.
Thank you.
Frankly, it is that adults like lots of different things, and OnlyFans is a platform for adults. So
and I don't want to do jokes on YouTube where people like YouTube has censorship now. Fine, there's kids watching. I don't want I have a kid now. I don't want to traumatize him too much. I mean, he's my son, so it's not gonna be great. But I also was starting to self-censor. We talk about censorship. We don't talk about self-censorship. I don't want someone listening to my podcast, with their kid in the car and to hear something about something crazy. So I also like the idea where I know everyone here is going to be 18 and up.
Yeah, I think it does give artists freedom to say what they want and to be controversial and to have a point of view. And everyone assumes it's sexy content. Some of it is sexy content, and we're very happy with that. We're an inclusive platform, and we're that way for a reason, because we believe in all the things that Whitney just said. We believe it's very important for adult content creators to have a safe space, to be able to monetize, and also to be able to do that alongside other content creators, right? There's a terrible tendency for people to be like other adult content creators and be like, no, they must be separate. They must be in a different place. But actually, we're all adults. We're all grown-ups. We can all choose what content we subscribe to. And as a user of OnlyFans, you choose who you want to subscribe to. So you choose if you want to see Whitney, or you choose if you want to see somebody else.
Yeah.
And the whole reason why we had OFTV was essentially to allow our creators to build their fan bases outside of the platform.
Yeah, and it was also free. That's the other thing, is that I think a lot of comics, are complaining that they'll, put out a special and they got all this negative feedback, because I think a lot of it is if you paid for something, you do have the right to go, I didn't like that or I did like that. But I like the idea that comedy being free streaming, if someone doesn't like it, they can just turn it off. It didn't cost them anything, it sort of takes the pressure off of it. And, as a comic, I think it's our job to always surprise people, to always shock people. I find sex is not particularly shocking anymore. We're all so desensitized to it at this point. It was over at the P tape. That's when I remember it being sex is no longer shocking. We're casually talking about a P tape, which, by the way, where is that? You should put that on OnlyFans. Oh my God, that would be so much money. And so I got obsessed with that idea because, I've done 6 specials, I've done a lot in a lot of different networks, and there's certain expectations, for how things can go. But I'm always looking for ways to be surprising. And when we did one of the roasts, we did a roast of Bert Kreischer. And, look, at a roast, it's very hard to shock people, right? It's just about going harder and harder and dirtier and dirtier. Sorry, everything's sexual all of a sudden. I didn't mean it that way. But I wanted to actually have a sincere moment, in a roast, that's actually the most shocking thing you can do. And I was like, you know what, I want to kind of take a break and tell Bert how much I actually love him. And it was this odd moment that we both got emotional and it got very awkward. And I think that most networks would want me to take that out, going well, that's not funny, that's not a joke. But it ended up really showing that comedians, even though sometimes we offend people and upset people, and all of a sudden we have this impossibly high bar for our morality. I don't know when this started happening, where people look to us as a moral compass. Yeah, there's Bert. Oh, there's Trevor. These people are so rich for no reason. And I was able to leave that moment in. And so I'm not up here saying, they let me say all these offensive words. It wasn't even about that. It was just about going, can we be experimental and creative? And after we've done 60 jokes in a row, can we actually take a second and have sort of a wholesome, heartwarming, vulnerable moment? Because I think that's actually the most shocking thing you can kind of do at this point.
No, definitely.
I do want to put some of the financials out there because I don't know if everyone's heard them because they're really amazing. So you guys filed with the UK some of your earnings. And so last year through November, OnlyFans revenue jumped to $6.63 billion, up 19% from the year prior. Your pre-tax profit reached $658 million. The number of creators on the platform grew 29% to reach 4.12 million. And your total payouts to creators was $5.32 billion. And your registered users also increased 28% to 305 million.
Yeah, it was a good year.
When a CEO is wearing sneakers, that they're doing well.
To Whitney's point, porn is free on the internet.
Yep.
How do you get people to pay for OnlyFans?
I think the reason why people pay for OnlyFans is because they want to engage with those particular creators. It's because of the ability to customize as well. to ask for specific content. It's also, for some people, it's an ethical decision, actually, about how they choose to consume particularly adult content. In other cases, it's about exclusivity. It's about seeing content that you won't be able to see anywhere else, whether that's like Nick Kyrgios giving an interview or behind the scenes of one of our boxers preparing for a fight, or whether it's something super sexy that you're really into. We were talking about your feet earlier on, for example. Whatever it is, the fact of the matter is that because we're open about it being a subscription and payments-based platform, as a fan, to sign up for the platform, you have to give your name, credit card details, and your confirm you're over 18. And in certain jurisdictions, you need to also go through age or identity verification. The laws are very complicated and different everywhere else. But ultimately, what that means is that you're ready to purchase. It's like being in the mall and already having your credit card out. You're just trying to find where to shop. Like, the difference, I think, and the difficulty where other social media platforms have struggled to introduce that subscription model is where actually you've been getting it for free for a really long time. And then all of a sudden people are like, yeah, I'd like you to pay for that. And you're like, but I'm a user here for like 5 years, and why suddenly am I being asked to pay for something in content that I previously was able to access for free?
It is so wild. Am I the only person that when you go to like a news site, like I'm like obsessed with being up to date with the news as long as it's free? How spoiled I've become. Like the headline can literally be like, is Putin gonna hit the nuke button? And I'll be like, is he? And I'll be like, $2. For 18 years of the Wall Street Journal, get out of here with that. I'll wait till Alex Jones tweets the truth.
and also, if he's going to, you'll find out. You don't need to pay the $2.
Yeah, for free. Yeah, like a patriot. Like we're such brats about that now.
It's true. And the other thing as well is that you end up paying for that content in different ways, even if it is free content. So one of the other big differences with OnlyFans is we don't have any advertising. So no ad revenue, no advertising stakeholders. And that means that when we make business decisions, we make them with our creators in mind rather than advertisers in mind. And we also don't track user data or monetize user data in any way. So if you're on OnlyFans and you're looking at someone's lovely feet, or you're looking at Whitney's content, or you're looking at anything else, we are not tracking
my
that
feet
data.
could go on there. How dare you?
I don't know. I didn't say
imply that I couldn't make money off my feet.
I don't know. I haven't seen them. We can do that later. That's fine. But I think it's that thing of actually, we are a very different platform by design. And the other interesting thing about OFTV, as you said, is OFTV is free. We actually spend money on OFTV as a marketing device for our creators.
Can you explain OFTV?
So OFTV is basically our fast channel. It's a safe for work fast channel which exists outside the OnlyFans platform. You can only be on OFTV if you have an OnlyFans account or an OnlyFans creator. But ultimately, we view it as a way to help our creators to grow their fan base, because there's less discoverability on OnlyFans than there is on lots of other platforms for a variety of safety reasons. And so we were like, okay, how do we help our creators? Let's think about actually creating a TV channel. And as I said, the difference is that's free. So that's the shop front. That helps people to grow. And we invest in that, and we invest in our creator community for that reason. And enables us to do cool things, and to partner with people like Whitney, or to create a reality TV show, which we've just licensed to Netflix, or win a national TV award, and things along those lines. It's a great place for us to play and experiment alongside our creators, right?
With these financials in mind, I feel like I have to ask, is there a world in which you would IPO?
We are not going to IPO anytime soon. I get asked that all the time. It's not in the roadmap. And the reason why it's not in the roadmap is it's very hard for us to think about what's the reason why. For most companies, they need to raise capital. We just talked about the fact that we definitely don't need to raise capital. And it also would, in some respects, dilute our business model of only having our creators as being the main people who we are concerned about performing for if we have a diverse group of shareholders. So yeah, no time soon.
I thought one other interesting tidbit from those earnings was that the majority of your revenue is from these microtransactions rather than the whole subscription package. So can you just talk a little bit about what those interactions are that people are paying for that are more micro, and why they're paying for that? What are you seeing there?
Well, I think so one of the things that we've seen is that, as you said, microtransactions have increased, are more than 50% of our revenue versus subscriptions. Doesn't mean the subscriptions are down.
Keep looking at me. I'm totally disassociating when you guys talk about numbers. I'm just like, what?
Just like, what is this?
What is happening?
I'm trying to bring you in. Yeah. That's what it is. I'm trying to make sure that I'm bringing Whitney in. And so, the reality is users want choice. users want agency. They want to be able to pick the content that they choose to pay for and interact with. And so that's why I think we're seeing more microtransactions, right? Like, I think that is a reflection of the fact that actually users want to be in control, and they don't want maybe if that article was like 50 cents.
Yeah.
You might click on it. You might. 25, is there a point? We're still not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Whitney's a hard sell. But there's for most of us, there was a point at which a price point at which we're like, oh, I might buy that one thing.
Yep.
But I'm not going to pay $2.99 a month forever to access this particular content.
And I think as someone that tours, as a stand-up, it's really important to me to stay, kind of like in touch with what our, country and world actually looks like. I think it's really easy to get very myopic in our bubble of, New York, Los Angeles. And when you go into, really do stand-up for regular, I don't mean that in a pejorative way, people, it's really easy to lose touch. Touring is really important to me. It's one of the few places we can really like go for it. And I think, touring is stronger than ever because people are like, I just know all this is censored. I know I'm not seeing certain things. They want to go to a comedy show and hear something that they can't hear anywhere else. And like, in times where HR is breathing down everybody's neck at their job, like comedy, it has tension again. There's, something really taboo about the energy. And fans are not going to come see you unless they feel like you are, emotionally connecting to them in some way. They can see you for free whenever they want. They'll see, Whitney Cummings is in Orlando. Like, I just watched her podcast today. I watched her YouTube videos. Like, why am I going to go pay $60? So if you're going to get someone to actually take that next step to get a babysitter, to, pay for the 2-drink minimum and to organize that kind of stuff, they really have to feel connected to you. And I think creators, we all understand there has to be some kind of personal connection because people have so many choices right now. And if they don't feel that connection to you and if they don't want to support your success, I mean, I'm just going to say it. I know this isn't going to get me in trouble, but when you see what just happened with Jennifer Lopez, like TikTok, the people on TikTok basically said, we don't like what you're doing with your money. Like you're not tipping waitresses. Waitresses are who made you who you are. Like, we don't like this. Like, fans have just it might be the only democracy we have left at this point, is people going like, we're only going to give you money and come support you if we like you as a human being. And it's a very interesting kind of change now. You see people going like, I don't like the way that person treats their employees. I'm not supporting them anymore. It's kind of fascinating. I think the overcorrection with the cancel culture stuff obviously isn't ideal, but it's interesting. Like, people want to get to know the person that they're, giving money to, and they want to have a personal relationship. And that's really cool that we're able to do that now.
To your point, I mean, creators of all types, comedians, you have so many platforms you need to manage. I mean, there's just tons. Like, how do you prioritize this? And then, Keily, I'll be curious to hear, how do you make OnlyFans a platform where people like Whitney need to spend their time and need to put the effort in? So maybe Whitney.
I mean, I like to go where the eyeballs are. That's kind of the way I do it. I just kind of go like, they voted. People are liking this platform right now. It might change. I was always the person that was a little trepidatious, and I think I missed the boat on a couple things. Like, I don't know whether it was 10, 12 years ago. My agent came to me and was like, oh, do we do a special with this, already very established comedy network? It was maybe my 3rd or 4th. Or like, what about Netflix? And I remember being like, the place that throws DVDs at your house in an envelope? Like, that doesn't seem like a good business decision. Cut to, it's Netflix, So I made a couple mistakes being trepidatious, so now I'm just all in. Like, I just go, if like you have this many fans, you guys must be doing something right. I want the fans to have a good experience. Like, I'm just gonna, jump. I've, made some mistakes with it. I put a lot of time into Vine, had a couple shows at Quibi, but like, you just go for it. It's like anything. Like, we're in the business of risk right now, and we just like take risks. And I think you just like, go where the people are. And then also just engaging with them. People are so against negative comments these days, or comment sections and stuff, and things that's toxic. I just like take what I like and leave the rest. And I go like, no, like, what do you guys think about this? People really miss the opportunity to get feedback from fans. There's a lot of crazy people on there. Like, the fentanyl crisis is very real if you look at my YouTube comments, but like, you can get people going like, I love being on OnlyFans because of this. I love Patreon because of this. I love this because of this. And I think that's the best way, let the audience tell you where they enjoy consuming what you do.
Yeah, and I think you said how do we encourage creators to come to OnlyFans? It's by creating an environment which fosters that. It's by creating an environment which enables creators to be themselves and to be authentic to their brand and to connect. I don't think we're ever going to have people who are just on OnlyFans.
That's right. That's the big.
And there's not going to be exclusivity deals.
That's what I love the most about it is like I get to do things other places. You know, in comics, like we all want to be on, you know, NBC and Peacock and CBS and Netflix and Hulu. You guys are all here. I want to name all of them, so you'll give me a job.
Be nice to Whitney.
But yeah, I love you. I love you. I'm available. I'll say whatever you want me to say. And you know, OnlyFans to me, it's like, you know, it's the perfect balance because comedians, we still have this, you know, look, we still, you know, weren't loved. I'm still trying to get my dead dad to love me, so I still have to, you know, but I still have this dark side that we kind of have to get out, you know, but we're not going to say those jokes or explore those, you know, themes on television necessarily. That's mainstream. That's being sponsored by Pampers and maybe being watched by a 15-year-old who happens to be in the room. So it's nice to be able to go like, okay, comics, instead of complaining that you can't say this on NBC and you can't say this, just go to where you can say it, get it out so that we can kind of bifurcate and go, okay, this is like the adult. We used to have that. It used to be like, this is, you know, the adults only 18 and over, and this is kid friendly, you know? So I think it's really nice to not have to choose and to have, you know, both options.
We still have that in real life. Like, you're not going to take your kid to a nightclub. Right. Well, I mean, you might, but you might get in trouble for it. But, you know, it's, you know, there are places in the universe which are grown-up places and places for grown-ups to go and do grown-up things, and we are one of those platforms online.
And there's also things you might not, again, the self-censorship. There's things I don't want to necessarily do in a Netflix special, and there's a time turnaround. So the way that, you know, stand-up specials used to work is you would work 2 years on this hour, and then you would, you know, put it out and people would watch it. But now there's so much access to comedy. Like if you want to talk about something, you know, and, you know, Netflix is like, oh great, your special is in 8 months. You're like, this joke is going to be stale by then, you know, by the amount of like memes that are out there and jokes and tweets, you know. So OnlyFans, I was like, can I shoot a special and air it in like 2 weeks? They're like, yeah, I don't see why not. And then I was like, you know, because for certain networks, they have to be 60 minutes to qualify for an Emmy, you know, and it was like, but sometimes you're like, this is about 45 minutes, you know what I mean? Can I do that? They were like, yeah, we don't care what time length it was. So it was just, there was so much freedom in it. And, you know, and there's certain things that I wouldn't necessarily want to say other places. I mean, there was a joke that I know wouldn't have gotten past. It was on the Burt Kreischer roast, and Tony Hinchcliffe was on. I'm sure you guys know about Kill Tony, huge YouTube comedy show, live show that's done in Austin. And I said, you know, Tony Hinchcliffe flew in today. You know, Tony is out at the Comedy Mothership. Joe Rogan started a comedy club called the Comedy Mothership in Texas, because in Texas, you're going to be a mother whether you want to be or not. And And I don't think I even would have wanted to do it on another network. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not worth it in a lot of ways. And I think that like the context of it made it so like, okay, let's do that joke here. You know, it's a joke I want to make, but not one I would want to do on another network, and not something I would want someone to watch my library on Netflix in 5 years and see that, because, you know, we won't have a country in 5 years.
What a place to end.
What? We can't end on that. We can't end on that. We have to end on that.
I got nothing more to beat Whitney. We can't leave you with that. Like. Thank you both. Thanks,
everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you.